We're at the last line of Daf Nun Aleph Amud Beis. Rabbe bar Rav Chanan. So we were speaking over here. Let's see the story in the Gemara. Rabbe bar Rav Chanan have a rogel, the Osi Mar Tivne le Pumbedisa. He would go from Mar Tivne to Pumbedisa on Shabbos. Va'amar tehei shvisasi b'tzinte. Let my shvisa be in a place called Tzinte, which was right in between the two cities. There was Ara the Tchum, the Pumbedisa was Ara the Tchum of Artivne. So Tzinte was right in between, and that's where he was able to establish a shvisa to be able to go from one city to the other. Oh, Malay Abaye. So Abaye said to him, "My daitech. What is your thought? What are you thinking about when you're saying that your shvisa should be over there?" Rab Meir and Rabbi Yehuda, halachic Rabbi Yehuda. Are you thinking that between Rab Meir and Rabbi Yehuda that we paskin like Rabbi Yehuda? So this goes back to the machlokes that we had before, whether a person that doesn't even go to the place, he's just thinking, having in mind that his shvisa should be there. Does this apply only to a person that's stuck in the middle of the road and he doesn't have another option? Doesn't have food, either can't go there right now? Or no, even for a person that's at home, he could also have in mind that he wants his shvisa to be in that place and it takes effect. What did the Gemara call this before? A osher and an ani. Person that's on the road has no better choice, so he's an ani. Or even an osher. Rab Meir said doesn't matter. Even a person that's home in the city could have this in mind. So Abaya asked him, are you paskening according to again, Rab Meir, Rabbi Yehuda, halachic Rabbi Yehuda, according to Rabbi Yehuda that is. Rabbi Yehuda holds that whether you're ani, whether you're an usher, you could have in mind and therefore it'll take effect over there. V'amar Rav Chisda. And you're also doing this based on what Rav Chisda said. Machloikes b'makaim ploini. That the argument between Rab Meir and Rabbi Yehuda is regarding a case where the person has in mind about a different place. He's not even present at that place right now. He has in mind a different place that he wants to be kind of shvisa there. And according to Rabbi Yehuda, that would work even if you're in your city. But Rab Nachman disagrees. V'tanya kavasei, and we learned like Rab Nachman in Abraisa, the Gemara quoted before, that in Abraisa it said that according to Rabbi Yehuda, you could only do this if you're actually going to be there in that place. Amalei, so Rabbi Bar Chanan said, Hadribi. I take avcharata from this anhaga that you can't establish a shvisa in the place if the person is not present over there. If he's in a city, if he's an usher and he's in his city, l'kula alma, you can't establish a shvisa over there. The machlokes, according to Rav Nachman, between Rabbi Yehuda and Rab Meir, is if you're actually present there. And there they argue: do you actually need food? Do you not need food? But if you're not even present there, so then l'kula alma, if you're in your city and you have a choice that you can go there, you can bring food there. For a usher, they didn't give this option b'chlal to establish an Eiruvin tchum in this way. Amarami bachame harei amru Shabbos yeshloi dal damas, or Shavas yeshloi dal damas. So they said that a person that goes to the place where he's establishing his shvisa for the Eid of Tchumen, so besides the 2,000 amas that a person can walk from that place, he also has dalad amas in that area where he's kind of shvisa. He has dalad amas. Whenever you talk about the tchum for a person that's kind of shvisa, it's always 2,000 amas. Plus another 4 amas, because he has the 4 amas for that place. Hanais and a Eiruvin, so a person that wasn't there, didn't go there by foot, but he put the Eiruvin over there. He went and put food there and went away. Yeshle dal damas, does he also have those dal damas for that place or not? Maybe the dal damas is only for the person that's actually present there. Especially we said before that the whole shir of dal damas is based on the size of the body of the person. That could extend his hands and his body. That's the shir of dal damas. But maybe if he's making the Eiruvin by putting down his food and going away, you don't have this dal damas. So Rava says, Toshamam, I'll bring you a raya of what it said in the Mishnah, Lo yomru ma'arvim bepas elo lahakol. So Rabbi Yehuda says that the whole Eiruvin that they will make, they allowed you to put bread and you don't have to go there physically, it's a leniency. That he doesn't have to go out there with his feet, he doesn't have to go physically, you can put food there. So the whole thing is a kula. If he goes there with his feet, for sure it's good. That's what it said in the Mishnah. Now, if you're going to say that if you put the food there, you don't have those dalad ames, hi lahakol. So why are you referring to the person that puts food as a kula? Lahachmaru. There's a chumrah here. If he goes there physically, he has Daled Amis. If he puts food there, he doesn't get that space of Daled Amis. So there is going to be a chumrah in such a case. So why are we calling it a kula? And for the Gemara, no, it's not a raya. Afila hachi, even though he's not going to get those Daled Amis, a person would rather have the option to go and send someone to put food there, and he doesn't have to go himself out there, even though he loses those Daled Amis, but he gets the 2,000 Amis that he wants to go from that place. And he'd rather send someone with food and not have to go there himself. So therefore, it's still considered to be a kula, even if you're going to say that he does not get that extra Daled Amis. Zakte Mishnah, Misha Yotza, we had this quoted in the Gemara yesterday. Misha Yotza Leilech Be'ir, Shema Arvim Ba. A person went out from his city. He wanted to make an Eiruvin between one city and another city that is more than 2,000 Amos away from each other. Let's say there's 4,000 Amos between the cities. And he went out to establish an Eiruvin right in the middle. And middle of the way, his friend tells him, let's go back. It's not the time to go now. As the Gemara says soon in a brayso, so let's say his friend tells him, the weather's not good now, it's too hot, it's too cold, let's go back. And he never ended up going to be there in that place, to put food there, or to be there to establish his Eiruvin, his shvisa there. So what's the halacha? Hu mutter leilech. So this person that had, when he went out, so because he went out already, we say that even if he didn't arrive to that place where he wanted to establish shvisa, we say that that's what he had in mind, and therefore the shvisa took effect, so he's allowed to go from one city to the other city. V'chol b'nei ha'ir, but other people of the city that also wanted to establish the shvisa, but they didn't go out like he did, asurin. They can't rely on this Eiruvin like he couldn't rely on it. Divrei Rabbi Yehuda. Rab Meir says, Kol shu yachol ha'arif v'lo yiriv. Any individual that had the option of making an Eiruvin before Shabbos, like this person, he went out on the way. He could have continued. His friend was persuading him not to go, but he could have continued, and he did not go. Harei zeh chamar gamel. We have a suffix whether that Eiruvin took effect, and therefore we treat him like a chamar gamel. Chamar gamel is the expression the Gemara always uses by a suffix Eiruvin. And to remind you again, what's this expression of chamar gamel regarding a suffix Eiruvin? A person that's traveling and he has a donkey in front of him and a camel behind him, or the opposite, and he's being pulled in two directions. The same thing over here. We don't know where his shvisa is. Is it shvisa in his house in the city? Or is his shvisa there in that place where he intended to go out and make his shvisa? So therefore he could only walk on Shabbos those 2,000 amos that are in between. To walk the 2,000 amos from his house in the opposite direction, or to walk from that place where he wanted to make the shvisa in the opposite direction to the other city, he can't. Only he's being pulled from both directions because we have a suffix, so he could only walk in between. That's Rab Meir's Shitta. Zok the Gemara, the question the Gemara asked yesterday, Ma'ishna ihu u'ma'ishna inhu. What's the difference? You have the people of the city, they also intended for the shvisa to be established in that place outside. They didn't go anywhere though. They may have had that in mind, but they stayed at home in the city. And this person went out. And we say for him it did take effect. So what's the difference? Ma'ishna iu, that for him we say even if he returned and he never ended up going there, it took effect. The Ma'ishna inu, for the people of the city, it did not take effect. Rav Huna says, what we're talking about over here is this person that went out owns two houses. He owns a house in one city and a house in the other city. And in between, there's 2,000 amos for one city and 2,000 amos for the other city. There's 4,000 amos. So Ihu, this individual that went out, Kivin the Nafik Leila Orcha, once he goes out on the way, and he went out on the way in the intention to get to the other city where he has another house there, Havale Ani. Now he has the status of a poor person that's in the middle of the way. He's not anymore at home. He left his home from one city and he's going to his house in the other city. So therefore, for an ani, we're makel that even if he didn't arrive to the actual place where he wanted to establish a shvisa, but we say that he had that in mind. He went on the road and he had that in mind to establish a shvisa there, and that's good enough. But for hani ashirininu, all the other people are in their home. Rich people, in other words, how do we define rich people in this context? They're home. For them, an Eiruvin cannot take effect just by them being home and having that in mind. Tanya Nami Hachi, we learned this as well in a brayso. Mishi yesh shnei batim. Person owns two different houses. Ubeneim shnei tchumei Shabbos. And between these two cities, there's two tchumen, there's 4,000 amos. Kivin sheichzik bederech. If he went out on the road, Kana Erev, he is kind of the Erev in that place where he wanted to, even if he didn't end up there. Divrei Rabbi Yehuda, like it said in our Mishnah, this is Rabbi Yehuda's opinion. Yes, Rabbi Yossi bar Yehuda. Rabbi Yossi bar Yehuda said another point. He was going out on the way, he wanted to establish a shvisa there. And his friend tells him, lean poi, let's stay over here, let's sleep over here, let's go back into the city and sleep over here. It's hot, it's too hot now. It's not a time to go further, or it's too cold now. So tomorrow, mashkin v'hoylech. Even though he didn't end up there to the place where his Erev is, tomorrow he can get up and go and rely on that shvisa that he had in mind to establish over there. So the Gemara will now explain, what did Rabbi Yossi bar Yehuda just add to what Rabbi Yehuda said? It's not very clear what exactly he added. It just seems to be spelling out another detail that his friend found him, and his friend told him, don't continue going, it's too hot, it's too cold. What exactly is the point that Rabbi Yossi bar Yehuda is adding over here? So the basis of this whole story is, as we'll see in the Hemshech of the Gemara, let me just explain it before we go weiter, the person went out on his way. He had in mind to establish his shvisa there, but then he went back. Now the question is, what happened when he went back? Do we have enough grounds, enough basis to say that even though he went back, his original plan to establish the shvisa there is still, he still has that in mind. He wants the shvisa to be in that place. Or should we say, because he turned around and he never went to that place to establish the shvisa, so maybe he went back home and he decided, okay, forget it. My shvisa will be in my house. I'm not going to travel to the other city. I'm not making this Erev Tchumen. So over here, the Gemara is now going to explain, this is the machlokes between Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Yossi bar Yehuda. What grounds do we have to say that he still has in mind to establish his shvisa in that place, although he didn't end up going there? So the Gemara, Omar Rabbe explains as follows. Loimar kula almaloi pligi ditzarech. Both Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Yossi bar Yehuda would agree, Loimar meaning that it only in a case where this person had a chaveira, his friend, that came and told him, don't go, it's too hot, it's too cold. Everybody would agree that it's necessary for this to have happened in order to still assume that he intended to make his Erev there. Why? What's the difference? What's the pshat here? If a person is going out on his way, and then on his own he turns around, nobody told him anything, he just decides to turn around. What are we going to assume then? Why did he turn around? He retracted his actions. He decided, forget about it, I'm going back home. But if he's going on the way and he wants to go, LMI, his friend comes and tells him, don't go, it's too hot, it's too cold. What are we going to assume? He really wants to go, but his friend is persuading him not to go, so he decides, okay, I'm not going to go there, but he really still has in mind to be kind of the shvisa there. So that's a good basis to say that he still wants to be kind of shvisa there. So everybody agrees it has to be a case of loimar, that your friend came and told you that you should go back home. Ki pligi, what's the argument over here? Lahachsik. Do you also need another condition? That this person actually left his house, he already went on the way. Lahachsik means he got on the way to go there to establish his shvisa there. Is it enough? Rabbi Yossi, so what the Gemara is saying is, Rabbi Yehuda says, in order for us to assume that the person wants to establish the shvisa there, you need two conditions. He had to have gotten out on the way, and his friend told him, turn around. So now we know that he got on the way and he really wanted to go there, and his friend told him to turn around. Mashenkin Rabbi Yossi bar Yehuda says, even if he didn't, this is Rabbi Yehuda. I believe so. Mashenkin Rabbi Yossi, but there's two pshatim in Rashi here, so I'm not Mashenkin Rabbi Yossi bar Yehuda says that as long as your friend told you, don't go, it's too hot and too cold, that's good enough to say that you had a mind to go there. If the person was sitting at home, he never went out on the way, Bichlal, but he made it clear, I'm planning on going out. And he had a conversation with his friend. He told him, I'm going out to that place. And his friend told him, don't go, it's too hot and too cold. The very fact that he said that he's planning on going out and his friend persuaded him not to go, that's enough of a reason to say that he could establish his shvisa there. And he intends to establish his shvisa there, even without going out on the way. Rav Yosef says, the machlokes between Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Yossi bar Yehuda is the opposite. Lahachzik, the kulam lepligi ditzarech. Everybody agrees that you could only say that we have a basis, that this person wants to establish his shvisa there if he actually got out on the way. That everybody agrees. Ki pligi loimar. The argument is, do you also need, in addition to that, loimar, that the person has to say that he's going out on the way? So Rabbi Yosi by Yehuda says, besides lahachzik, you also have to have loimar. Mashenkein, according to Rabbi Yehuda, it's enough just to have lahachzik, that the person said, went out on the way. That's good enough. If he just got out on the way, we know that was his intention. Even if he turned around, he got out on the way, we know that it was intention, and therefore he could establish a shvisa there. Okay, so the machlokes, according to both Rabbi and Rav Yosef, is whether you need two indicators that the person wants to establish a shvisa there, or one indicator is good enough. The only question is, that one indicator, which one is it? Is the fact that he went out on the road the one indicator we're relying on? Or the fact that his friend told him to not to go, even if he didn't go out on the road, if his friend is persuading him not to go, is that the one indicator that's good enough to know that he's establishing a shvisa there? This is one pshat in Rashi. There's another pshat which turns over the whole Gemara. You could look in Rashi later if you want. You'll see Rashi has a whole different approach. But this is the first pshat that Rashi brings. Sagt the Gemara, whose opinion does this statement that Ula says follow? Mi shehichzik b'derech, a person that was out on the road. He already went out to go and establish a shvisa between one city and another. And his friend comes and tells him, go back home. Harehu muchzer, he's returning. This is a person that returns home. Umuchzik. But he also went on the road and he intends to go and establish a shvisa there. So on one hand he's returning, but on the other hand he already went out on the way, and therefore we assume that he wanted to establish his shvisa there. So the Gemara first questions what's Ula saying. If we're going to assume that he just wants to go back home, he doesn't want to establish the shvisa there. That's what the word muchza means. He went back home. Lama muchzik. Why is he calling him a muchzik that we say, no, he still really wants to establish a shvisa there? V'im muchzik, if we assume that he does want to establish a shvisa there, lama muchza. So why is he considered to be muchza that he's returning back? What is the pshat of his lashon of Ula? So the Gemara explains, the way to read what Ula said is, hachika amar. Afal pi muchzer, even though he's returning back home, muchzik. We assume that he still wants to establish his shvisa in that way because he headed out on the road. But if you look in here in what Ula said, Ula actually said two conditions. Ula said, Sai, he went out on the road, and Sai, his friend, is the one that told him to go back home. He didn't turn around on his own. So he said two conditions in order for us to assume that he wants to establish his shvisa there. Kaman, whose opinion is as follow? Ki Rav Yosef va'aliba de Rav Yosef Rav Yehuda. This follows according to Rav Yosef and according to Rav Yosef Rav Yehuda, that says that you have to have both of these conditions. And Rashi points out that the Gemara could have equally said that this follows according to Rabbah. According to Rabbi Yehuda, he also said that you have to have both conditions. That's what it came out from the Gemara before. Point is that Ula is saying, in order for us to assume this, you have to have two indicators that the person still wants to establish a shvisa there. Rav Yehuda bar Eshtese. Gemara now brings an incident that happened to Rav Yehuda. Two indicators? The fact that he went out on the road, and the fact that his friend told him to turn around. That was the lashon of Ula. He said both. Rav Yehuda bar Eshtese. Aisile kalkola de peri le Rav Nosson bar Oshia. He brought a basket of fruits for Rav Nosson bar Oshia. Ki ava ozel, so when he wanted to go back, this was on Erev Shabbos, and when he wanted to go back to his city, shafke, so Rav Nosson bar Oshia allowed him to step down, ad the noches darge, he stepped down one step, amalei, and after he already went out to step down one step, Rav Nosson told him, sleep over here tonight, and lamacha kadam vazal, tomorrow you'll go out. So he persuaded him to stay. So the distance that there was between this place where he was to the city that he wanted to go back to was not in the Tchum of Shabbos, right? So he wanted to go out and establish a shvisa in the place in between to be able to go. So what happened? Rav Nosson bar Oshia first allowed him to be machzik baderech, to take at least one step. After he took that one step, then he told him not to go. So then that could he could establish a shvisa just by the fact that he took one step to go, and Rav Nosson bar Yoshe persuaded him not to go. Keman. So according to who does this, what Rav Nosson did, go according to? Again, so what's the point over here? That Rav Nosson wanted to have two indicators in order for him to be able to establish a shvisa. The fact that he took one step already to go in that direction, and now that he's the one that persuaded him not to go, according to this, Rav Yosef, I'll leave it at Rav Yosef bar Yehuda. Goes according to Rav Yosef, and according to Rav Yosef bar Yehuda, that says that you need two indicators that the person wants to establish a shvisa there. The Gemara says, Loi, it doesn't have to necessarily be according to Rav Yosef, and according to Rav Yosef bar Yehuda, Kerabbe, V'aliv de Rav Yehuda. According to Rabbe's pshat in the machlokes before, according to Rav Yehuda, it also comes out that Rav Yehuda holds that you need to have two indicators. So either way, whether according to Rav Yehuda, whether according to Rav Yosef bar Yehuda, according to either interpretation, the maskan of the Gemara is, in order to rely on such a kind of shvisa, you have to have two indicators that the person wants to establish that shvisa. He had to have gone out on the way, and he only returned because his friend persuaded him not to go. So what did it say in the Mishnah? That Rav Meir says that in this case, when the person was persuaded by his friend to go back, you can't rely on that Eruv as a definite Eruv. He becomes a Chamar Gamol. Now we have a suffix where his Eruv is. Is it in his house, or is it in that place where he intended to establish a Shvisa? Fragt the Gemara, this concept of suffix Eruv, and the person loses the 2,000 amas of the either extremes of the sides, he could only go in between. This concept we learned before already. Suffix, in a case where there's a suffix Eruv, when did we learn this? Let's say, for example, a person puts food down for the Eruv, and then at the time of Ben Hashmashis, there's a suffix if that food is still there. A wall might have fallen on it, or the food might have been removed. So there's a suffix Eruv. Rav Meir, Rav Yehuda Oimrim, Harei zeh Chamar Gamol. That in such a case, because it's a suffix Eruv, so now he's stuck in between the two places, we're not sure if he can rely on it or not. So it already said this concept of a suffix Eruv that you're a Chamar Gamol. Why does he have to say the same thing over here again? Rav Sheshes answers, Loi taimet de Rav Meir. Loi taimet de Rav Meir. Shouldn't think and say that the opinion of Rav Meir is Sofik Irev, Sofik Loi Irev, Huda v'chama gamel. In a place where you don't even know if there was food there, b'chlal. In a case where you put down the food before, but now you don't even know b'chlal ben hashmashis if there was any food. In such a case, he's a chama gamel. That's a Sofik Erev. Aval vadai Loi Irev, Loi v'chama gamel. Maybe in our case, Rav Meir would be Maida that over here we see that he went back. He never ended up going to that place where he wanted to make the shvisa. He walked back home. So in such a case, Vadai La'irev, I would say that maybe this is not a Chama Gamel. Maybe it's not even a Safek Erev. It's nothing. Ela File Vadai La'irev. Even in this case, where we know for a fact that the person never walked there, have a Chama Gamel. It's still a suffix of a native. The hahacha vadai loy irif, over here he for sure didn't end up going to that place, and the kahava chamagamel, he still considers it to be a suffix. What's taka the basis of the suffix? Because maybe his kavana, even though he turned around, he maybe still had a mind that his shvisa should be there, even though he didn't end up arriving there. But the point is, this case is a much bigger chiddush than a case where you had food there, and now it's a suffix whether that food is left there or not, whether the food is still there or not. Over here, we see the person turned around. There's a much bigger basis to say that he b'chlal didn't want to make an native there. He never ended up making the native there. So that's a much bigger chiddush that Rav Meir is saying that even in this case, we say it's still a suffix native.
It's like the Baal Shem Tov read,
yeah, even if he didn't end up going there, but if he intended to be there, that's where his shvis is. That's tak interesting. Based on this Gemara, you could tak say a makkah for the Baal Shem Tov's word. He's physically not there, but it's considered as if he's there with pile. Yeah, over there, one step. The person took one step down. Ready, hechzik baderech, and he doesn't have to go any further.
The Rebbe says the tzaddik, that he becomes a tzaddik just because he has the
Hira Tshuva, tzaddik Omer. Yeah. Very good. Sagt der Mishnah, mi sheyatza chutz l'tchum. A person on Shabbos went outside of the Tchum Shabbos. Afila ama achas. He went out of the Tchum, just one ama. Lo yikonis. He's not allowed to enter back in. He left his Tchum. Now he's stuck there. Like the halacha is, when you go out of the Tchum, you only have 4 amas and you can't go back in. If you went out 2 amas, yikonis. You can still go back in. Shalosh, if you went out 3, then lo yikanis. Then you can't go back in. This is bad. We learned this before already, and the Gemara will explain this here again. Rabbi Eliezer says because a person has 4 amas, so he's in the center of the 4 amas. There's 2 amas on every side of the person, so he has 2 amas to move and go back in. Birashus. So once he goes back in Birashus, those 2 amas, so he can go back in into his tchum. If you stuck 1 foot out of the tchum, but it's still in the tchum, that is. And another foot is outside of the tchum, lo yikanis. That you already can't enter back in. You're stuck where you are. That's already considered going out. Pasuk that it says regarding Shabbos that you will hold back your foot from going, so it says raglecha. The way you read it is raglecha, which is your feet, loshen rabim. But raglecha ksiv, it doesn't say it with a yud, which it reads as raglecha. It's written without the yud, raglecha singular, which means 1 foot. So therefore you see that even with 1 foot going out, you consider to be out of the tchum.
So you stay there.
Yeah, you have to stay in that place. You have Dalet Amos in that area. You can't go back further into your tchum. You're already considered to be out of your tchum, and you have just 4 Amos in that place. Frag the Gemara, V'atanya ragloi achas b'toichat tchum v'ragloi achas chutz l'tchum yikanis. Clearly said in the Brisa the opposite. 1 foot inside, 1 foot outside, then you could go back into your tchum. And for the Gemara, Hamani Acherimi, that Brisa follows the opinion of Acherim. The Tanya Acherim, Oimrim Acherim say, L'mokem sherubai hu niskar. In the place where most of the person is, that's where he follows. On his dakir is another gear, so that's where the person is. When you stick out 1 foot, so most of your body is still inside the tchum. That's just the nature of the person's body. So therefore, he's still mostly inside the tchum, so it's not considered being out. You're talking before about going in or going to a place you want to be kind of shvisa. Over here it also shows you, it's just 1 foot out. According to one opinion, you're already 1 foot out. It's already a problem. Anyway, Dr. Gemara weiter, a different version to this statement over here of Rab Chanina. Rab Chanina, 1 foot in, 1 foot out, you're not out. Fakert, Rab Chanina said it's okay. So even though it's written without a yud, and it's written in a way that you would read it, raglecha, that's the ksiv, but raglecha karinon. The kri, the way to read this word is raglecha, with both of your feet. Only if you went out with both of your feet, then you're out of the tchum. If you stuck 1 foot out of the tchum, you're still inside. Frek the Gemara v'hatanya lo yikanis. But in a Braisa we learned that you should not go inside if you stuck out 1 foot. So for the Gemara, who the Amaka Acherim, Rab Chanina is following the opinion of Acherim, the Tanya L'Mokim Sherubai Hu Niskar. That the person, regarding the Tchum, follows where most of his body is. If you only stuck 1 foot out, most of your body is still inside.
So why Laikanis?
Huh?
Okay. Why does it say Laikanis then?
Again?
If it's inside.
No, that's the Braisa that holds that it's a problem, Taken. Who the Amaka Acherim is not going in the Braisa. Rab Chanina that says that you could go in, is following the opinion that says that he's still inside. Rabbi Eliezer, going back to the Mishnah, Rabbi Eliezer argues on this whole thing. He says, Shtayim Yukonis. Even if a person walked out of his tchum 2 amas, he can still go back in. Shalish lo Yukonis. Only if he went out 3 amas, then he shouldn't go back inside. Frag the Gemara Vatanya, but we learned in the Braisa, Rabbi Eliezer, Achas Yikonis. So if you went out 1 amah, then you can go back in. Shtayim, if you went out 2, Lo Yikonis, you can't go back in. So it's a contradiction to the shear that it said in the Mishnah. And for the Gemara Leikashia, there's no question. Ha the Okar Chode v'Komatarti. In our Mishnah, we're talking about a person that's he went out with 1 amah, and he's now standing in the middle of the 2nd amah. So when it says shtayim, it means he's in the middle of the 2nd amah, so therefore he still has a space to walk 2 amas, but it's overlapping into his tchum, because he's not full 2 amas out. If he would be full 2 amas out, so then the space he has to walk does not overlap his tchum, because a person only has 2 amas in each direction to walk. So he walked out 1 full amah, and he's standing inside his 2nd amah of outside of the tchum. So it's still overlapping his tchum to go in. But in the Braisa it's talking about the Okar Tarti. He walked out 2 full amas. v'kam atlas, and now he's standing right outside the 2 amas, inside the 3rd amma, in the beginning of the 3rd amma. So over here, it's not anymore overlapping to the tchum that he was in, so he can't walk back in.
Didn't we say that we have 4 amas besides the 2,000?
A person has 4 amas.
Besides the 2,000.
A little more.
Yeah, so over here, the person does. Over here, the person walked out of his tchum. 2,004 amas the person has, he walked out of all of that.
Right.
So he's standing outside. Now he has surrounding him 2 amas to each direction. So if he walks out under 2 amas, he can still go back in. But if he walked over 2 amas, it's not overlapping. He can't go back in. Now the Gemara brings a 3rd beraisa.
4 amas means 4 and a little more. When you learn 4 amas and a little more than 4 amas.
Das gedenke ich nicht. Yeah.
Has to be 4 amas and a little more.
Oh, that's been negated to the Alaxen. Yeah, gerecht. Yeah, you're right. Okay. So this shear, I don't know if it says it Lagabi this shear over here. I don't think so. That's a good point you're making. I don't think it's shaykh that is shear. This shear that a person has once he walks out of the tchum, that he could only go 4 amas, I don't think it means Ba'alaxen. We had it before when you get to Dal Damas B'Rishus Rabim, when you get to the Ribua of the Alpayim Amma, and when you get to the space of a platform that creates a Rishus HaYochid. But when you get to the space a person has when you walk out of the Tchum Shabbos, I think it's only 4 amas, not Ba'alaxen. I think so. Okay, now the Gemara brings a 3rd beraisa. Vatanya Rabbi Eliezer Omer afila ama achas lo yikonis. In the 3rd beraisa it says even 1 amma. If you walked out 1 amma, you can't go back in. How could this be? So the Gemara says that's talking about a completely different case. Ki tanya hi lemoidid. Over there it's talking about a person that wasn't inside a city. He was completely far away outside of a city, and he's measuring 2,000 amas of his tchum to the city. So the halach is when a person is outside a city and he has his own shvisa there, so you measure 2,000 amas, and wherever your shvisa is, 2,000 amas away, that's where your tchum ends. The Tnan, we learned, Ulumaydid Sha'amru, a person that's measuring 2,000 amas from wherever he is, Noisnan Loyal Payim Amma, he gets 2,000 amas, Afilisayf Midase Kola B'mayra, and if that measurement of 2,000 amas will end up somewhere in a cave, and it'll be stuck there in a cave, that's where it goes into. Doesn't matter where it is. Even if, for example, it ends up in a city, he could only go to that point in the city, not any further. Usually when you're inside a city, you can go in the city as much as you want on Shabbos. But if a person establishes shvisa somewhere outside and he has 2,000 amas from that place, it goes 2,000 amas from there no matter where he ends up. So over here in this beraisa where Rabbi Eliezer said even 1 amma out, he was talking about a person that his shvisa was outside the city and his 2,000 amas ends 1 amma outside the city. And therefore you can't go any further because that's where his shvisa ends. That's a totally different thing that he was talking about. The last Mishnah of the Perek, Zok the Mishnah, Mi shehechshich chutz l'tchum, a person that was on the way out of Shabbos and he was outside of the tchum of the city, afila amma achas loy yikonis. So even 1 amma he should not enter. Rab Shimon Omer, okay, so in other words, if he's even just 1 amma away from the tchum of the city, so too bad, he can't enter into the city on Shabbos. Rab Shimon says, even if he's short from his 2,000 amas to enter into the city, 15 amas yikonis, he could enter. Why? What this means is, Meshuchais is the people that measure the tchum of Shabbos. They measure it with a rope. Meshuchais, they stretched out a rope to measure the exact measurement. This is something we're going to learn a lot about in the next Perek in Mitzvah Shem, how you measure the 2,000 amas. So when the people, when they would measure the 2,000 amas and they would put a marker where the 2,000 amas is, they wouldn't make the marker at the exact place of 2,000 amas. Why? Because of the people that mistakenly walk out a little bit more than the tchum, so therefore they would shorten the tchum about 15 amas, or be'erech, that amount, 15 amas. According to one pshat in Rashi, the 15 amas is lav dafka. But they would make it a little bit shorter in order for a person that walked out, that he should be able to go back in. So therefore, if you're found out of a city, and you measure, and you see that you're 1 amma short, even 15 amas short, you could assume that you're really in the tchum of the city, and therefore you can go into the city. According to the first pshat in Rashi, as I mentioned, the Mishnah that says here, 15 amas is lav dafka. It's not, it's just a mashal, that there's a certain small amount that they add for the people that make a mistake. But there is another pshat in Rashi where he makes a ganze cheshbon why exactly 15 amas. It's based on the measurements of how you measure with the rope. We'll learn it in Mitzvah Shem in the next Perek.
If not, there was a simon
Yeah.
all around the city, the 2,000.
Yeah.
How would they know taka when it's $2,000?
But the measurement.
Someone's walking Shabbos.
Yeah.
How does he know? Unless it's
You can't know in a Chanami. You have to have a simon. Sure. You go today in the Catskills.
The Tyson conference.
Yeah, you have to have a simon. Today you go in the Catskills. They have a map. They made it years ago. I don't know if they ever refreshed it. I remember when I used to go. They have a map where they write exactly the Tchum Shabbos of the area where you can go. And in some places you go, they even have it spray painted on the floor. Atkan Tchum Shabbos. But you're right. You have to have a marker. You have to have a place. If you have a city and you go and you're walking out, you have to have to know. Yeah.
Today it's not common.
Yeah. Today.
Over here, like
Right over here, or even in most places. But in other places where there's also not. No. But if you go to certain places, you have to take and make a marker. Otherwise, this is the whole next page will be about this. How you measure the what?
Today in miles.
I'm not sure how to transfer to that. Yeah. So the Gemara finishes off. Tana mipnei toyei hamidah. The pshat mipnei toyin refers to the people that make a mistake in the measurement, that they might walk out, so therefore they added a little bit space, they made it a little bit shorter, so if they walk out, they'll be able to come back in. So because of that, a person that finds himself outside, he can rely on that to be able to go into the city on Shabbos. Hadran alach mi shahitziyuhu.
If you make Eiruvin around the city, do you need to put down any food?
Yeah.
Huh?
Yeah.
It's like Erev Chatzei.